What's good, AA fam? You see the title of the video, so let's get right into it. At number 10, we have NBA Jam. Now, the one you see here is clearly an update of the original arcade version of this game. The first installment of NBA Jam was actually released in 1993 and was absolutely groundbreaking at the time. Unlike other sports games of its time, which were taking a more realistic approach to gameplay, NBA Jam got way more creative, giving players oversized heads and bodies and allowing them to pull off ridiculous moves on a miniature court. While on the subject of creativity, let's get into the next one. At number 9, we have NBA Street Volume 1, which is an absolute classic in my book. This game right here took everything that we loved about the street competition in basketball and packaged it along with NBA players like Steve Francis, Gary Payton, and Michael Jordan, just to name a few. This game specifically took what NBA Jam did great and built right on top of it, allowing you to pull off ridiculous moves like insane dunks, crossover combinations that at the time we had only seen done by the Harlem Globetrotters or maybe at an N1 mixtape tour. All I can say is if you were an NBA fan in the early 2000s and you had a PS2 at home and didn't have this game, what were you doing? Now at number 8, the nostalgia is running deep as we have NBA Live 2003. And I mean, come on, just look at that nice, clean loading screen with Jason Kidd in the New Jersey Nets threads. Sheesh! Now this is a solid NBA game through and through, and I really believe it's where EA Sports began to find their stride when creating these type of video games. Now it might not look like much now with the day and age that we are currently in with the technology and graphics that we have at our disposal, but at the time, these graphics were actually really good. The player animations combined with the smoothest you would feel when performing a crossover or a drive-by move made for an absolutely great experience when playing this game. I think the only shortcoming for this game was that a lot of the players didn't have their own personalities, so they did kind of seem to pull off the same moves and a lot of the similar body types as you can see here. But it was 2003, so to be honest, what EA pulled off in this one is still pretty impressive, and this game had an absolutely amazing soundtrack, so that definitely keeps it on the list. NBA Live 2003 was definitely the beginning to a golden era in EA Sports for NBA games. Coming in at number 7, we have ESPN NBA 2K5, which in my personal opinion is one of the most immersive NBA games that you could get at this time. Not only did it have a super dope themed ESPN aesthetic, but you also got play-by-play, post-game and pre-game reactions from the late great Stuart Scott and Bill Walton as well. I also feel like this was the first NBA game to take a deep dive into the realism of an NBA broadcast, as they would definitely focus more on the arenas that the teams were playing at and the warm-ups of the players as well. You got to see the coach going through his pre-game strategy with the team and also the players warming up before they hit the court. This made for a really cool playing experience as you actually felt like you were gearing up for a Friday night matchup on ESPN. This is also the first game I remember the crowd having a little bit more focus on them, as it seemed like not all the people in the stands were just the same copy of everyone else, but they actually had some personality to them. Now the gameplay itself wasn't like the modern day 2Ks that we see today, but it definitely was smooth, and I think it fared well against other NBA games of its time. Now for this next one coming up on our list, we're actually going to rewind the clock a little bit and run it back to a more simple time. At number 6 we have NBA Shootout, the original. Now to be honest, this game was definitely ahead of even my time, but I had to put it on the list simply because it was a predecessor to a lot of the NBA things we see today in video games. It had a dope loading screen, it had pretty good animations for what it was. I mean, come on, it was 1995. As you can see, it had a pretty good array of options that you could actually choose from in terms of the gameplay, the commentating, and all that sort of stuff. And the theme of the game definitely seemed like it was going for that stay in school type of look, which I believe the NBA was pushing in the mid to late 90s. Now as for the gameplay, I know, you're gonna say you can't even see who is who on this court. But again, let's remember, it was 1995, and in an era where sports games were just beginning to hit the market, I think this one's actually pretty good, to be honest. Now coming in at number 5, we have an absolute banger with EA Sports NBA Live 2005. Now this game right here does hold a special place in my heart, as it was the first NBA video game I ever owned as a kid. And remember a few spots ago when I said that EA Sports was entering its golden age in creating NBA video games? Well, this right here had to be the pinnacle of it all. Look at the animations, the movements. I mean, look at these dunks. Oh my goodness. The dunk contest itself was enough to purchase this game. I actually owned this game for PC, and I can remember sitting at the desktop for hours, just loading it up and going to NBA All-Star Weekend and just playing over and over and over again, because man, this was just an absolute experience. The soundtrack to this one was pretty good as well, and although it didn't have the greatest graphics in the world, the gameplay and the dunk contest made up for anything that it lacked. Coming in at number 4, we have what I believe to be the biggest sleeper of this whole list. It's NBA 06 The Life, which was actually an iteration of an NBA game that Sony itself put out at the time. Now, I think this one definitely gets forgotten about a lot because, again, it wasn't put out by 2K, it wasn't put out by EA Sports, it was Sony itself who put this game out. And to be honest, it is a really good NBA game if you do ask me. Not only was it the first NBA game that I personally saw you could play as G League teams, which at the time were actually called D League teams, but it also had a mode where it took you through the day in and day out life of what it's like to be an NBA prospect, which is why it's titled The Life, Volume 1. You would kind of work your way up and try to become the greatest against other NBA talent, which if you think about it, it's kind of like what my career is today. I actually owned this game myself for PS2, and I do believe it was ahead of its time and a front runner in a lot of aspects. I mean, look at these graphics. It also had a shot meter, which I had never seen before on any NBA game. It was a very smooth playing, just very immersive, all-around great experience if you're an NBA fan at the time. For a game that came out in 2006, I still believe this could be enjoyed today. Coming in hot at number 3, we actually have what is my favorite NBA game of all time, and that's NBA Ballers. Now this one is just nostalgic for so many reasons. I mean, look at this main menu. This was the perfect mix of what hip-hop was at the time and what the NBA was at the time. I can remember being introduced to this game for the first time when I got taken to the Basketball Hall of Fame around the year 2004. And what I can remember catching my attention most was, obviously besides the very catchy intro and theme song, was the attention to detail when it came to the players' faces, builds, and just the all-around colorways and schemes of the game itself. To me, this was the first NBA game that really got it right when it came to the players' looks and appearance. I mean, look at these. It looks like they scanned the players and dropped them right into the game. And on top of the great graphics that this game displayed, it took what you loved about the NBA most in terms of the players and the aesthetic of it, and it dropped you right in a more personal spot, allowing you to play at these players' homes. I mean, look at the choices you could choose from. You could go to Kobe Bryant's villa, the Garnett residence, Shaq's estate in Florida. I mean, the options really felt endless, and it felt like such an immersive experience that you really felt like you knew these players firsthand. To me, this was when the PS2 games at the time hit peak creativity. And I mean, as a young NBA fan growing up in the early 2000s, this game had it all. When it comes to the gameplay of NBA Ballers, it took a completely different approach than what we saw in NBA Jam, NBA Street, or even NBA Live or 2K. This was like the ultimate street game experience. You chose your player, and then you would duel it out one-on-one at one of the players' residences, basically for bragging rights. And I mean, some of these moves were just absolutely sick. Combined with the overall aesthetic of the game, sometimes you would see players rocking their own jewelry and just other little things that would just completely change the way you view this game compared to other NBA games of the time. Alright, AA fam, so we're about to get into our top 2 NBA video games of all time, but before we do, I'm going to need to ask you to like and subscribe this video so that we can continue to keep putting out great, killer NBA content for you guys. Coming in at number 2, we have NBA Street Volume 3, which in my opinion is the dopest NBA Street video game that ever came out. This iteration of NBA Street took everything we loved about the first 2 games and packaged it into a brand new, shiny, sleek, and updated version. Honestly, if you didn't get hyped off this intro alone, I don't really know if you're a true NBA fan. This version of Street had everything, including a dope soundtrack and all the updated players including Carmelo Anthony, LeBron James, D. Wade, Vince Carter, and a bevy of many more who were absolutely in their prime at the time. There was just something different about Street V3. It was gritty, yet also had this classic edge which paid homage to the Street Volume 1 and Volume 2, while also bringing its own sauce and flavor to the mix. I also think that what gave games like this a little bit of an edge over your traditional NBA games such as 2K and NBA Live was the updated rosters. I mean, these games weren't coming out every year, So every time there was a new version of it, you knew that there would be new teams, new players, and just an overall different experience from the last time you played this game. And just like NBA Ballers brought a little bit of what hip-hop had to offer mixed with the NBA experience, Street V3 did the same. Just look at these baggy shorts and jerseys. So we finally made it to number 1 on our list, and here we have NBA 2K13, which, if we're looking through a scope of what the rest of this list has been, is pretty much a perfect mix of every other game on here. NBA 2K13 was executive produced by none other than Jay-Z, so you know this game had a little bit of that hip-hop edge mixed with the traditional NBA experience of 2K. NBA 2K13 was the first version of 2K that introduced us to the right stick, which allowed gamers to use moves that they had never seen before in 2K specifically. This allowed users to pull off much more realistic crossover moves, weaving in and out of traffic through defenders, while also being able to pull and pop jumpers at a moment's notice. This is when playing 2K was just an absolute fun experience, and I hope one day they get back to this. So there you have it, guys, AA's top 10 NBA video games of all time. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to this channel and video, and also follow us on Instagram. Thank you guys for watching.